Good afternoon and welcome to another little video. This time I'm going to show you part of my collection of Dalek toys that ranges from the 60s through the 70s and up to the present. I haven't got all of them, so those that are missing I'll put up in a little picture show at the very end of the video so that you can, with captions, so that you can see the ones that I was talking about. Now to start, we've got to go right back to the very early mid 60s to about 1964-65, when a company called Louis Marx brought out what they considered a Dalek. Here it is. Yeah, it's rather a bizarre looking beastie, isn't it? It kind of looks like a Dalek, but not an awful lot. They sort of went a little bit odd with the shaping of it, especially around the neck area, with the tiny little dome that they put on there, and of course thinning down all the panels for where the sensor domes, I guess, the hemispheres sit. That should be a double panel there. They've completely changed the shape of it so that it, as you can see, it's far narrower at the back than at the front. But all the same, they have a certain charm to them. I don't know why they chose this path with the look, because it is obviously so far off, but they still look quite good, I think. I rather like them. They did a range of them, different colours. I've got the silver here with the gold banding, and that's actually a very dark blue transparent plastic in the neck. Just about see that there, I think. And I also have a black one that they brought out. This little fella here, black with the silver base, gold striping, and his neck is red. Now they made those transparent because these toys, standing at around about 6 inches tall, they had rather an interesting little feature. If I go underneath, this is actually a bit of a cheat. This is a slightly later version that came out. It's an exact reproduction from the 1990s, made by a company called Daypole, based on the old Louis Marx ones and using their molds. And what they did, you flicked a little switch underneath and it lit up and it would randomly wobble about. They look a bit silly now. If you let them go in a fairly confined space, they go, whoops, bumping off. Excuse me a moment while I go and rescue them. Okay, stop. Right, they suffered no damage. Oh, I say that. Silver one's lost his eye. We'll see if we can find that in a little bit then. Yeah, that's the main feature of them. They whiz about like lunatics, making a horrible noise, flashing lights, and bumping into anything and bouncing off from it. So not very accurate, but I'm sure they were an awful lot of fun for kids back then, and of course that gave them a chance to own, oh, it snapped off, blast, to own their own Dalek. So overall, I quite like them. They also brought out a smaller version, using the same basic design. This one. It's about 4 inches high, so quite a bit smaller, and it doesn't have the insane bump and go action, or as the box used to describe it, realistic Dalek action. Or was it robot action? Whatever. I've never seen Daleks bump into walls and bounce off each other quite in that maniacal fashion, but there we go. Yeah, so this one, a lot smaller, but pretty much identical. And this is supposed to have a pullback motor, and when you let go it's supposed to shoot forward, but unless you give it a little push, unfortunately it doesn't. So never mind. We'll move on to one from the 70s now, because unfortunately I don't have any of the other 60s ones anymore. I used to have the little, what's called a Cherry Swap It, It was a very small thing, and it had a detachable dome, detachable neck and shoulders part, and you could swap them round, and they were all different colours, so you could have a bright blue base here and a green bit in the middle and a bright red top if you wanted to. They were fun. They weren't very accurate again. For some bizarre reason, none of the Dalek toys of the 60s were that accurate. Possibly the most accurate of all of them, though, was one that I used to have as a child. I've no idea what happened to it, unfortunately. And that's the Hertz Dalek. And that was a special buy for Woolworths. The old FW Woolworths stores. Yes, it was exclusive for them. And it looked reasonably good. In fact, I guess it was close enough in that they used that particular toy as a special effects stunt prop, I guess, in the serial Power of the Daleks, which unfortunately at the moment is one of the unrecovered episodes. So we'll never get to see it. Well, actually there is a little clip available. It's also here on YouTube, with the Hertz Dalek being seen in action. And these bigger fellas here, they grouped together about 100 or so of them and used them as special effects shot in John Pertwee's story Planet of the Daleks, where they had supposedly 10,000 tucked away in hibernation in ice caves waiting to be awoken. To get the visual of thousands of Daleks, they just got hundreds of these little toys together, sprayed them all. So yes, we'll move it on now to the 1970s model. There were a couple in the 70s. I only have the Tomy one, unfortunately. I don't have the other. I'll put pictures of it up though. They also made a Tom Baker figure, a Leela and a K9 and a cardboard TARDIS. I think they did a Cyberman as well. The Tomy one, this fella, a little bit more accurate possibly in appearance. Slightly better proportioning around the neck and the dome, though not exactly perfect. And they still went ahead and used clear plastic for the neck bin. Now they've got the slats moulded on here, but there's no sign of mesh. But the skirt is a little bit more proportioned, even though they've still got it cut down to the one row at the back. It looks a little bit better. Now the main selling point with this one, and sadly it doesn't work anymore, it has inside of it a special little player mechanism here with a little disc that goes inside and a small stylus. I'm not sure we can access it through here or not. Now that just opens into the battery compartment. But there's the bottom of the mechanism right there. And what that did, it had a little gramophone record almost on it, and it was read by a stylus, and it made the Dalek read out phrases. And you activated it by pushing a button on the top. Whether it worked or not was a very hit and miss affair. It sometimes did, it sometimes didn't. But it was a nice try. The K9 was a talking one as well, had the same principle with the little record in it. And once again, it sometimes worked, more often didn't. Now this one also came out in a red version, which is odd because we'd never seen a red Dalek on the TV screen before. But I guess they thought it looked nice, so they brought out a red one. That is it for the 70s basically. We have to then jump right up to the very late 80s and early 90s to get the next commercially available toy. And we'll move on to that in just 1 second. Okay then, the Daypole. Made in Wales. In fact, this is the same company that made the large reproductions that we just saw a moment ago, the big ones like this fella that wobbled and bounced about everywhere. They said this is a Daypole. This one is a Daypole reproduction of the 60s, but they're identical in virtually everywhere except the battery case, because they had to modify that because you couldn't get the batteries anymore that the old ones used to use. Anyway, they brought out a range like this. Looks a little bit better, but it's got a peculiar fat front up here. I'm not quite sure why they went with that. But now the neck is a little better and the dome is a little bit more like a real Dalek's dome. The eye, though, is a bit chunky, a bit short, and poorly scaled. The arm and the plunger arm and the gun aren't too bad, reasonably detailed, and they do allow a certain degree of movement. And at least now they've got the skirt section with the right panel configuration, even though it's obviously not steep enough at the front here, and of course the slight bump there, it's almost like these things are pregnant. Now, as I say, they came out in a range of colours. Here's a black and silver one. Once again, we hadn't actually seen that one on screen yet. Oh no, I tell a lie, we had the Supreme at the end of Remembrance of the Daleks. Yes, that was black and silver, a similar scheme to this one, so I suppose that's what that one's representing. Now the sort of action point of these figures for these, now we have a bit of dome articulation, was that you could pull them back, let them go, and they actually do go quite nicely. And there you go, let the motor wind down. So they're getting there, though it's still very strange to think that by the 1990s we still haven't got a proper screen accurate Dalek toy. We know that they can get things very accurate. Just look at the dinkies from the dinky Joey Anderson toys from the mid-60s that we talked about in an earlier video. So why they couldn't get these right, I do not know. And then Daypole also brought out a Davros figure. All they've done here, instead of having the custom base that he should have had, is chop the top half of the Dalek off and stick on a new top piece here and the figure. Now if I can get that close enough to the lens without it going too blurry, you can actually see slight detail there in the face. It isn't too bad. It kind of looks a bit like Davros. They're a bit heavy-handed, I think, with the wiring looms and what have you on top here, and the metal cage, but still it's there. And you've even got a tiny little microphone there, and there's difficult to see here, range of control, levers and buttons for him to press, and some around the side. Not very colourful though, as it should have been, but still it's reasonable. And there's a bit of articulation here. He turns side to side slightly, and he can manoeuvre his arm. A slight articulation there, and the head will turn side to side. Now when they first brought this figure out, I don't know what was going on, what they were thinking of. Perhaps the designer had never seen the show on television, never seen the character, but they brought him out with two arms. Now this is one of the slightly later versions that they rectified to fix the problem. All they did was just chop the other hand off and tuck the remains of the arm away down the side like that, so it wasn't quite as obvious. Why Davros had two hands in the original run, I'll never know. But there we go. Davros, and he has the same pull back and go action. Now, at the time, because Remembrance had just been on, I thought I'd have a go at recreating the special weapons. And there we go. This is a modified Imperial here. As with the Davros figure, where they chopped the top of the Dalek off, that's what I did. Right round there. Locked it off, and then using heavy duty cardboard, cut roughly the right shape for this tray, made a simple pivot, using part of the shoulders here, having sanded off the slats. Built it up with a piece of card here and a little roller assembly, and we created the heavy gun. So now we have the revolving gun platform. This was originally the top of the dome, and the little black section here is one of the pieces out of the neck from in here. Just one of the little slivers inserted under the dome, and a little bit of extra detailing around here. So we've got a reasonable reproduction of the special weapons. And of course I weathered the bottom and painted it up to match. For once, a Daypole Dalek actually looks a lot more like the prop that it's supposed to look like. And it wasn't until very early in the 2000s when we started to get Dalek toys that actually looked more like what we'd seen on the television. Here we go. This is a 6-inch, sorry, Product Enterprise talking Dalek. Now this toy, as you can see, has a much more accurate profile to it. A much better skirt. It's still not perfect. It's still off in a few places, but it's a lot closer than those that we've had before. Full articulation of the arms, of course. I don't quite know why they've gone with all the detailing in the gun that they did, all the support bits here. That's much more reminiscent of the first few serials that we saw, where they had got these inner supports, but of course not this many. But still, it works. And now we've got mesh moulded in between the slats, and of course the slats have now got rivets on them. So it's much better looking, and I say the proportions on this one are far closer than we've had before. Fundamental failing though with all these, they get the neck bin completely wrong. It shouldn't be there with the centre strut in the middle. That should be more offset so it's clear, obviously so the operator inside can see out clearly. But this is the way they moulded it, and they put some rather strange chunky side pieces in there that look a little bit odd. But overall it's looking an awful lot closer to what we see on television, because you've got a nice dome articulation and a slightly better detailed eye here with a nice little array of rings and with the little central pupil. Now, as I said, these are talking Daleks. That was their main selling feature. They didn't pull back and go. They just sort of wheel about on simple wheels here. However, if you press the little button, little oval panel in between the arms,
Exterminate! You are an enemy of the Daleks!
there you go. It uses quite a realistic voice chip. I think it's Roy Skelton, the Dalek voice artist at the time, and of course the lights light up. And this model came in quite a few variations. We got obviously the 1960s style here, and we got a nice Imperial. It could be from either Revelation or Remembrance, because they've moulded it with just exactly the same body parts but no other sort of detailing to differentiate it, so it could work from either story. And once again,
Daleks rule supreme!
there you go, he speaks, and it's not quite correct but rather nice. They do this black and gold chap here. It's supposed to be a representation from the John Pertwee story again, Planet of the Daleks. Very elegant Supreme that came on. On the original prop, instead of the normal eye stick here, they actually used a red and white torch which flashed in time with him speaking, which was a bit odd, and they gave him the bigger built up bumper fender section here from one of the movie Daleks, so he stood quite a bit taller. Looked very elegant. But overall, this is still quite a nice representation, even down to the slightly more purple coloured lights, though once again the television prop had much larger movie style lights on there. They're actually jam jars with a purple cell inside to give the colour. Let's see, what does this one say? I think I've just been exterminated. I think the batteries might be getting a bit low on this one. Actually, that's not too bad. The Supremes normally have a slightly deeper, slower voice. So yeah, that's what the early 2000s brought us. Far more accurate, still a few areas that are wrong. Some of the profiling on these panels here is out, it's not quite right. But overall, this is quite a nice little toy, and at the time they were hailed as the most accurate Dalek toy produced to date. Now this company went on to produce some replicas from the movies, and we'll have a look at those very, very shortly. And here we are with the Product Enterprise movie Daleks. These stand about 8 inches tall, and as you can see, they're based on Daleks from the very first Peter Cushing film from the 1960s, where they made them that little bit bigger with the raised fender or bumper here. The actual dimensions of the body are identical. They're made by, well, the original props of course were made by the same ones that made the television props, a company called Shawcraft. So they're identical in every other way. They've given them slightly larger lamps on top, the bigger bumper, and they've used metallic blue on the hemispheres, and for the dome a plain light blue fender, gold bands here, and that's been recreated very, very nicely, very accurately by Product Enterprise. Now these are really the first very, very accurate models. As you can see, they've finally got the neck bin arrangement correct. And these particular ones have all been modelled with the claw. Of course, some of the Daleks seen in the films did have the regular sink plunger, but I guess the claw is just a slightly more interesting thing to have on there. Nicely represented, and overall a very good looking model. Now the nice thing with these is that they also can talk and they can move about. They're remote controlled. Got two of them here. I think the one here, which for some reason had blue lamps fitted to the head. They were in the film, of course, they were all red, so I'm not sure quite what happened there. It must have been a mistake in the factory. Otherwise he's identical to his red lamped brother over there. This one, I believe, has batteries installed. So let's see. Yep, little light in the back. Comes on, as you can see. Now, they came with rather a smart little remote control, quite a novel little gadget here. Shaped like a little TARDIS. And if you push one of the buttons, you've got actual dialogue from the films. I can't remember which button does what for movement, so let's just hope he doesn't shoot forward over the edge of the table. Let's try this one, that's more likely to go back. Maybe not. No, I think we need stronger batteries. He should maneuver. Has this one got batteries in? I can't remember. Let's have a look. Oh. trying. I think the batteries are getting a bit weak on it. No, it's not going to go for it. Never mind, you get the sort of idea. Anyway, they're quite happy to chat away. I'm not going anywhere. Okay, let's just move you to one side. Not only did they have the silver and blue general workers as such, they brought in representations of the upper ranks. So we had the nice red and black leaders. They, like the silver and blue ones, well, they're exactly the same in body, but they've got this rather nice paint job. I wonder if he can do anything. No, maybe not. I think. Oh no, he's on. Turn enough, otherwise I'm going to have all over the place moving about. No. Batteries are all very weak in them. So you've got very nice representation of the red Supreme that we saw in the film, that was quite often seen in dialogue with the big boss, the black and gold, or black, silver and gold, because they alternated the paintwork on the hemispheres, silver and gold, silver, all the way around, and Product Enterprise have captured that perfectly. The gold, silver and gold neck rims. The only thing they did wrong with it, this one should have had the plunger, not the claw. But I'll forgive them that, because otherwise it's a very nice looking little model. Come on, have they got batteries in there? Oh, they're just about dead. No, he doesn't want to play. Okay, never mind. So there we go. That's the first of the very realistic toy Daleks that came out, and this was, oh, when were these out? About 2003, 2004, maybe 2005? Yes, 2005, it says it right on the bottom there. Lovely. Those are absolutely splendid. Some of the best ones to date. Now, predating that very slightly, still in the 90s, there were model kits available. They're still available today if you look on auction sites, but they do go for quite a lot of money now. They're long discontinued and very rare. And there's a company called Comet Engineering, I think it was, that brought out a range. And here's one that I made up from their kits. There we go. He's taken from the second Dalek movie with Peter Cushing. And they've altered him very slightly from those in the first. They've now given him the slats to match the television. The hemispheres now are a normal lighter blue. The bigger bumper's now gone black, and of course the dome is back to silver. But all the silver ones in the film had blue lights on top. Now this one, obviously being a plastic model kit, doesn't have any sort of action features. It doesn't move about and it doesn't talk. But it's almost identical in proportion and size to the Product Enterprise kits. But he builds up into a very nice looking Dalek indeed. Of course it doesn't do anything other than look nice, because there's nothing else inside. He's completely hollow. But a very nice kit. And then we had to wait until the television series came back before we got any other toys really released. And that was from another company called Character Options, and this time they made an absolutely fabulous range. Okay, before we finish with the Product Enterprise completely though, should just point out these little fellas that they brought out also in the early 2000s, and these are little tin plate reproductions of clockwork Dalek toys that were available back in the 60s. Character Options got the license and started producing toys from the show, and one of their first ones was of course the Dalek. Like so, the nice two-tone copper and gold. This was the first type they brought out. They had a remote control version as well, but in appearance it was virtually identical to this, and these came out just after the first Christopher Eccleston story, just called Dalek, which featured this new type with the new slat arrangement, the new kind of neck, and the new detailing and sculpting on the dome, the new lights, and even, as you can see it there, the individual serial numbers there on the dome piece. Quite a nice representation of it. However, they made a mistake. They made it too chunky. In this part it was a little bit too fat and threw the proportion out. It was too wide at the bottom, trying to come into too narrow, so it made it a little bit off in scale. Didn't look quite right. And also, whether it was done to compensate for that, I don't know, but the eye, the arm and the gun were also all off scale. Just a little bit too big. It's a shame, because it was quite a nice looking little model, and they brought out a couple of versions of it. Here's another one, and this time it's got the special claw arrangement that we saw used in their second appearance on the show. Now this one also, it has the removable chest plate, and it reveals the mutant inside. Quite a nice novel little gimmick. Give it something else to do. It's a shame it doesn't split down the middle and fold out, but I guess that would be a little bit complicated to do on a small toy like this and push the costs up far too high. But this one also sadly has the out of proportion skirt. It wasn't very long though before they rectified it with this one. This is actually far more in keeping. It's correct proportions now. The whole profile is much more accurate. The front isn't as sharp and steep. It doesn't look as fat and bulky. And they've also slimmed down the arms as well. As you can see, it's quite a bit, the plunger there alone is quite a bit smaller. In fact, it almost fits inside that one. And if you look at the size of the guns, completely different. Same with the eye. They were all completely off scale on the early ones, but the more recent revision has got it all more accurate again. I think the colouring on this is slightly better as well. This company has covered pretty much all the different variations of Daleks that we've seen on the screen in the show. Here's the rather elegant Supreme from the Stolen Earth episode. Not sure what all this stuff's about on it, but never mind. This one is actually the radio controlled one, and he obviously has complete forward, back and side to side movement, and shouts a few phrases too. Rather nice. Nicely done. And they even went slightly more modern with them. One of the latest stories again, Victory of the Daleks, where we saw these rather nice drab green ones. Another message. They look rather good. And to correct the errors that Daypole made, they brought out this rather magnificent Davros. Obviously this is the new series version of it. You can see here much more detailed control panel on his chair. And take a look at that face. The detailing and sculpting in that is really quite remarkable. Absolutely superb all around. Very, very high standard of construction, even down to the clawed hand. Very good effort, I think, from character with the new series like these. They've also gone on to recreate a whole range of Daleks from the classic years, I guess you'd call them. The original TV series. There we go, from the Dead Planet, the first ever Dalek that we saw, with the little round lights on top bands here instead of slats, light blue hemispheres, and the gun with the little support struts inside. Very nice, very accurate little model of the first ever Dalek version. They've covered, like I say, a wide range of them. This is the one from the second series, Dalek Invasion of Earth. And they go to a lot of trouble to make sure the details are right now, even down to this one having the silver eyeball, the black stalk there, the correct gun mantles again. And this one, I believe,
Daleks are the masters of all.
yep, talks. And it's been built up onto the bigger, more movie style base, and as they had it in the series with the original fender as well mounted on top, so it gave it quite a bit more height, made it a little bit more impressive, and of course easier to move around in the streets of London. Following with the 60s, they then progressed to, like so, from Power, the Chase, Power, Evil, where they had the slats and the mesh quite nicely moulded on there, as you can see. Now the gun has also taken on the slightly more modern appearance without the inner braces. Revised the lamps on the head. I believe this one talks as well.
Daleks will destroy all life.
Yep, there you go. As you can see in that picture, in that view there as well, there's very nice mesh detailing of the neck pin. You can see they go to a lot of trouble with these, and they've covered a wide range of eras. There's the Supreme from Day of the Daleks, and your typical 70s and 80s grey warriors from Planet through Genesis onwards, right up until the last story, really, Remembrance. There's a few slight variations out that character have done with different mesh arrangements and slat arrangements, slightly different eyeball ring configurations, but they've kept the same basic shape all the way through. And they've paid a lot of attention to detail to capture just about every variation out there. This one actually is from Genesis, and you can see it's got the slightly more bronzed gun. And here's the fella who had the torch for an eye. Here's the Supreme from Planet. Very nice chap with the big built-up base. And let's get some detail on the eye there. See a red and white eye. And that was actually a torch that somebody had been out and bought and stuck onto the end of the eye stalk for the television prop. And here this one has the correct larger headlamps, and they've got the correct neck rings configuration here as well. It's smooth with no uprights. So overall, a very, very nice detailed range. And last but not least, this is 70s Davros character options version from Genesis of the Daleks. Like the Daypole one, same character, but unlike the Daypole, it actually has some colour in it and some proper detailing. So the headpiece here, the neck brace and the wiring that comes around, slightly better microphone, and the detailing on his face is far superior. And he doesn't have the other arm hanging, flapping about, just ruthlessly chopped off. And of course he has the correct arm here, and a bit more colour around the back as well. It's far more accurate, this one. And it's the proper custom skirt as well, it's not just the bottom half of a Dalek. So Character have really gone to a lot more trouble to make sure that their Davros looks like the one that was on television and not some strange thing that they brought out all those years ago. So there we have it. That's the state of play with Dalek Toys pretty much. I suppose I should finish actually with just a mention from Character. They've brought out also a range of the ones that everybody loves to hate, the new Dalek Paradigm. Now this video isn't here to say whether they're any good or not, that's for everybody to have their own opinion of. But you can see the Character have done quite a good job of recreating the new Paradigm look, right down to the new neck ring arrangements and the detailing on the eyeball there, the much larger, more powerful gun, and the slightly unfortunate shelf, the gun box arrangement there, and of course the very controversial lump on the back. But they've done a very good job of it. Of course they brought out all the range. That's the regular red drone, and just to show, there's the Supreme, the white Supreme, same thing, just different colour. And they've got the yellow, the orange and the blue one as well, all present and correct. Whether you like them or not, like I say, is a different matter, but they've done a very good job of recreating them. And just out of interest, I wondered whether it would improve their look if they went back to a 60s look with these. You know what? I almost think it does. It doesn't take away the hump at the back. What a big mantelpiece. I mean, you could sit a cup and saucer on each side of this quite happily, and a little clock in the middle. But I rather think the colours suit it quite nicely. So there we go. Slightly modified Paradigm in the original colours. Well, that's it. That's enough from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.